then that's cool. Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of PlanetM, I want to welcome you all here today to Next Energy for this webinar and in-person discussion on the PlanetM mobility startup pilots and testing grants. I'm Jim Saber. I'm the president of Next Energy. And Next Energy, we're an accelerator of smart mobility and smart grid technologies and solutions. And so as part of our role as an accelerator, we work with industry to commercialize new mobility and grid technologies and do a lot of pilots and demonstrations. And so in the past and currently today in the mobility side of things, we've done electric vehicle car sharing, scooter sharing. We're working on extreme fast charging to charge an electric vehicle in 10 minutes, to smart charging and vehicle to grid integration in communications and power flow. So, with us as a organization that does a lot of pilots and programs, we're really excited to support PlanetM as the technical program manager for this effort, for the pilot programs. So our role in this is to, once the companies are selected through the review process, we'll work with the startup companies to finalize scopes of work, budgets, and contracts, and then assist with both the technical and the financial reporting for the program. So we're really excited to partner here on that. One other thing, and we're in the shameless plug portion of this program, Next Energy, we also support research and development for small businesses and startups. So if you are a startup company or a small business in Michigan and you are pursuing federal research grants, we provide cost share through a program called Match Energy. So you can learn more about this program to where we can provide a substantial portion of the required cost share in cash on behalf of the state of Michigan if you're pursuing federal research, development, and demonstration programs as a small business. There's other resources in the state to help small businesses and startups. So actually there's some folks here from BBC that work with companies going after SBRs and universities with STTRs. So there's a lot of infrastructure support, and you'll learn more about that today when we get into the testing portion. So with that, I just want to introduce the panelists today. And first you'll hear from Amanda Roth from PlanetM, and she is going to walk through the mechanics and the structure of the pilot program and testing program. We'll hear from Michelle Mueller and Will Foss from MDOT and DIRC on a case study of the first pilot that's been run in the city of Detroit. And then we're going to go to a short question and answer period on the pilot programs. And then we'll switch gears a little bit to the testing portion of the program. And you'll hear from Mark Chappett from the American Center for Mobility in Ypsilanti, Greg McGuire from from M-City in University of Michigan, and Craig Hoff from Kettering University. So a couple of housekeeping items here. If you're here in the audience in person, please make sure your cell phones are silenced. We are, for the people who are on the webinars, we want to minimize any interference. And if you're on the webinar, please make sure that your speakers are muted so that we minimize any feedback that we have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to introduce the PlanetM program.
And first, we're going to kick it off with a short video. All right, welcome everybody to the PlanetM Startup Grant informational session and webinar. I really appreciate all of you who have showed up here in person today and the several who are online as well. We had over 150 people register for this, which really tells us that there's definitely a demand for this type of a grant program within the state of Michigan. So we're really excited about that. We have probably about 60 or so webinar participants from 15 different states and countries. So we're going to probably talk about a couple of things here today. For you that are true Michiganders, you may have heard our talk before, but I want to make sure that those that are represented from other countries and other states really understand how strong the mobility ecosystem here is in the state of Michigan. So with that, I'm going to take just a moment and talk a little bit about PlanetM and who we are and what we do. Essentially, we kicked off about 2.5 years ago in partnership with MDOT, really as a marketing campaign for the state of Michigan. And the idea really was to showcase all of the mobility assets here in the state of Michigan. So essentially from the highest concentration of automotive engineers, more test facilities, AV test facilities than anywhere in the world, 17 OEMs, 96 of the top 100 tier 1 suppliers and so on. We want to make sure the rest of the world was aware of that. Well, it quickly evolved really into a business development tool for the state of Michigan, which is where we are today. We're a team of 6, and I want to take just a quick moment in the room and have my team stand up. So Catherine Snorenson and Kate Partington and Charlie Tyson are here in the room. And we also have on, I know that watching here is our colleague Sean Phillips, and I think Trevor Paul might be listening in as well. And I also want to point out somebody else in the room, Wayne Snyder, who's with Next Energy. Wayne and the team that just stood up are all critical parts of this particular program. So just take a look at their faces. If you have questions and I'm ever not available as well, the team is always here to answer your questions. But back to PlanetM. So the first thing really that we focus on is really asset coordination. And essentially what that means is we have created some different, and I'll show you what they are here, a couple different councils and committees to really make sure that the stakeholders here in the state of Michigan have an opportunity to communicate and collaborate with one another. One of the more newer ones that we're starting is a city alliance. We just had a very early kickoff meeting, and it's really because there's so much mobility deployment activity here in the state of Michigan. We want to provide an opportunity for cities to share information and learn from one another. The second thing we focus on is really company connection, and that means a couple of different things. One of them is the PlanetM landing zone, which is right down the street from where we are today in WeWork. We've leased out the entire floor, which is where our office is located, as well as Pure Michigan Business Connect, and we sublet that space back out to global mobility companies. So as of today, there's probably 35 or 36 member companies, 8 of which are corporates. This is just a sampling of some of the companies that are partners today. And if you're interested in becoming a PlanetM landing zone member, you can visit our website, planetemlandingzone.com, to apply. Another area that we focus on is match meetings. So since January of 2018, so just shy of a year, we've held over 1,800 one-on-one meetings. And that's a combination between startups, corporates, investors, academia, and many other stakeholders. The next one that we have coming up, where we're going to have several match meetings, is at the Automobility, which is essentially the Detroit Auto Show. It's going to be January 14th through the 17th in Detroit. So there's a lot of opportunity to participate. So make sure you visit the NIAS website for more information there. And there's a delay. Okay, all right. And the third thing we focus on is technology activation. So that means a couple of different things as well. The first one is city pilots. So one of the city pilot programs, and what that really means is we, PlanetM, have taken a role in helping to convene public-private partnerships with various stakeholders in cities across the state of Michigan to help deploy new mobility technologies. Grand Rapids is one of those locations, which is on the west side of the state of Michigan. And through that, it's PlanetM, Ford, the Right Place and several others, Mobile GR, but we essentially launched the Ford City of Tomorrow Challenge, and that just wrapped up, and they announced a $100,000 grant winner. In 2019, Ford plans to launch 6 of these City of Tomorrow challenges, so kind of stay tuned there to see where the rest of those other cities show up. The next one is in the city of Ann Arbor. It's the Ann Arbor Mobility Transformation Program. And this, again, is a public-private partnership with many different stakeholders intended to really identify what some of those mobility challenges are for the Ann Arbor region and help deploy solutions. So they'll be making an announcement of those pilots coming up very soon. And last but not least, and hopefully these three will be one of many more to come, but is in the city of Detroit. It's called Project Kinetic. This is actually 10 different entities. Because I'm here in the city of Detroit, I tend to be much more involved in this one in particular on the day-to-day, but essentially run by Boston Consulting Group, and it's PlanetM, the city of Detroit, General Motors, Lear, DTE Energy, our local utility, also a local philanthropic group called New Economy Initiative, Bedrock Detroit, one of the largest real estate property developers here in the city, as well as Quicken Loans. So several different players here at the table. And again, we performed over 100 hours of interviews of residents and visitors to the city of Detroit to really understand what some of those mobility pain points were. We went to the drawing board, came up with over 120 potential solutions to those problems, and boiled it down to 6. So where we are now is in phase 2 of this pilot deployment, where we're deploying those 6 pilot programs, and they will be deployed in 2019. And then grants, which is what brings us here today. We have a couple different grant programs. One is called the $8 million Michigan Mobility Challenge. This was announced in the spring, and we had a full-day workshop led by MDOT. And essentially, we met with several different groups to really understand what some of the challenges were for veterans, disabled, and senior citizens, and help deploy mobility solutions to solve some of those problems. And here's just a few examples of some of those. And to the meat of it. So the PlanetM Startup Grant, which is why we're here today. So in the spring 2000, at ITS America, so spring of 2018, we announced essentially this particular, the PlanetM Startup Grant. There's 2 legs to the grant. We have $1.3 million to spend between October 1st of 2018 and September 30th of 2019. There's a testing side of the grant, which is approximately $300,000. And then there's the pilot side of the grant, which is approximately $1 million. And essentially, the way that this will work is, so we have here, and you're going to hear from in just a couple of minutes, from Kettering, from M-City and ACM, who are going to talk about some of their test site facility features are, and then you'll be able to apply for those grants. And then the other leg is through the pilot side, and you're going to hear from MDOT and Dirk a little bit about the case study because they were our first grant recipient. And speaking of, so Dirk and MDOT are here sitting next to me, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. I don't want to steal their thunder. But I am excited to announce here today, so just last week we made public our first round of grant recipients, and the first one is robotics. This will be a deployment in the city of Detroit, and I think we have Ryan and Tom here in the room if you want to stand up. I think you're here. There we go. Okay, in the back of the room. So if you want to hunt down Ryan and Tom after the event too, maybe you can get some input on the type of experience that they had, or maybe they have tips for you as well, things that they've learned during the process. Thanks, guys. And next up, we have Alert. I think Kyle Fox might be in the room as well. Kyle, want to stand up? Thanks for being here today, and congratulations. So this particular deployment will be in the city of Grand Rapids. And last but not least is a company based in the UK called Humanizing Autonomy. And Maya couldn't be here today, but I think she's online on the webinar. And her deployment will take place in the city of Ann Arbor. So those are our not our first, because Dirk is our first, but our first round of grant recipients totaling $224,000 between the 3 of them. So now what I want to do is talk a little bit about some tips. So we're in kind of the tail end of round 1, and I'm going to talk a little bit specific to the pilot side of the grant. So there's 3 rounds to it with 3 different deadlines. Our first deadline was October 1st, and being that this is a new grant and it's the first of its kind in the country that we are aware of, we learned some things along the way. So what I'm going to go through here today is just a couple of really basic tips when you decide to apply for the grant. Some are going to seem really basic, and I'm sorry about that, but hopefully it will help. But essentially, what you live and breathe this stuff every day as the startup. And so what we want to make sure is that you are explaining what problem you're solving in your application. Sometimes there's some assumptions made about what the reviewers know or don't know. So just assume that we don't know anything, hence the reference to you're explaining this to your grandparent. Talk in really basic terms. What problem are you solving? And basically, and how is this unique as well? So clearly state that in how your product or service will solve that problem. And also around acronyms, there was a lot of use of acronyms in the first round of applications. So we want to make sure, again, that you're spelling out what your acronyms mean, and you can use them following up. Just make sure we understand what they are on the front end as well. And also tell us how your solution or pilot is going to be unique and what, basically the first of its kind, right? So this is not intended to be a pilot program that deploys a pilot that was going to happen whether there's grant or not. So say, for example, you're already in works with a partner here in the state of Michigan. You already have plans to deploy this technology. You already have it deployed in 100 cities worldwide. That is not necessarily the type of technology we're looking for. We're looking for new and innovative. We're looking for companies that want to potentially test a new aspect of their technology or solution as well. And tell us also if this solution is being deployed elsewhere. And it's okay if it is, but we also want to understand how this pilot deployment was slightly different or unique from the one that's already deployed elsewhere. And also be really clear about how you're going to measure success. So that was really unclear in some of the applications as well. We did receive in the first round over 30 applications. So, it is a highly competitive grant process. We just announced, here, 3 grant recipients. So it's really important that you tell us all of this information about, especially around measuring success. Also, make sure that you attach a detailed pilot plan. So what does that look like? And including a timeline for deployment. So the goal is once you are notified that you're a grant recipient, we expect to take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to get you under contract and work through all of kind of the back end legal side of things. And once you are selected as a grant recipient, that is when Next Energy really steps in. So Jim talked a little bit about it and alluded to it, but Next Energy is our program management partner and fiduciary for this grant. So you, as a grant recipient, will go under contract with Next Energy, who is in contract with me, the state of Michigan, PlanetM. So I just want to make sure that's also very clear as well. Also include a breakdown of your budget. So really help us. It does not have to be to the penny, but we do want to get a sense of if you have submitted a $50,000 ask, help us understand how that money will be used as well. This is not intended to be a product development grant either, so also keep that in mind as you move forward. And also, let us know when we talk about kind of letters of commitment, whether, because you can have one partner or multiple partners, but I should really be clear as well. So the startup can be from anywhere in the world, and the startup is the applicant. You do have to deploy the technology in Michigan, and you have to have a Michigan partner, but you can have multiple partners. As long as one of those partners is here in the state of Michigan, you are good to go. But if there's one or more partners, we expect there would be, but with one or more partners, help us understand what level of commitment. Is this just a verbal at this point? Do you have, a letter of commitment, a letter of intent of some sort? It's really helpful for us to understand kind of the bigger picture, and if there's multiple groups that support this and might support it in different ways, please help us to understand that as well. Here's the key, and I'm going to spend a few minutes on this. So there is a 25% match. The way that we advertise this is that the state of Michigan, PlanetM, will fund up to, which are the most critical words, up to 75% of the cost of the grant, which means that you will be responsible for a minimum of, 2 more important words, a minimum of 25%. Most important thing is that match, there has to be cash or skin in the game. The match cannot come in the form of a discount. The match cannot come in the form of in-kind services. The match cannot come from you, the startup, the applicant. So the match must come from one or more of your partners. So I just want to make sure that is 100% clear as well. And really, essentially we anticipate, there's a lot of flexibility here, but we anticipate that an average range for a pilot would be somewhere between $50,000 to $100,000. And I'm going to go through quick deadline reminders as well. And there will be an opportunity for Q&A coming up here shortly. So hold your questions if you can for just a few minutes. But as I mentioned, this is there's 3 rounds to the pilot side of this grant. Round 1 clearly has passed. It was October 1st, 2018. Our next deadline date is February 1st of 2019. And then for round 3, June 1st, 2019. We do encourage you, if you're considering to apply, we only have so much money and so much time, so we do encourage you to apply early. But it is important that you have identified your partners, identified your match from those partners before you apply. And the testing grant application, we will be evaluating the 1st of every month. And that will be accepted through September 1st of 2019. And should this grant end up being extended, should there be additional funds that are put toward it, everybody will be notified of that and made really clear. So that is it for now. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Mueller from MDOT and Will Haas from DIRC. And they're going to talk a little bit about being the first grant recipient, of what that looked like, the experience of it, and also just even keep in mind too, so if you haven't identified a local partner, a state partner, definitely you want to talk to Michelle Mueller after too. So if there's some opportunity there to partner with MDOT, they've been an incredible partner. They're very innovative, and Michelle's going to talk through some of the infrastructure. So thank you.
All right, so thanks everyone for having me. Again, as Amanda said, I'm Michelle Mueller. I work for MDOT in our Connected and Automated Vehicle program. So my responsibilities really lie around, I'm based in Southeast Michigan, and my responsibilities really lie in the areas, which is pretty vast, but from planning to financial decisions and things made, deployments, partnerships. We do a ton of work. A lot of my week is spent in meeting with companies, developing partnerships, and I'll get into some of those in addition to digging into the one we had with DIRC. So with that, I did want to share what's happening in Michigan. So what's really, what's around, what's out there, what's developing. This is a good just kind of graphic of the outlay of what our projects are. Yes, we do look forward, outlying. We look for funding in different ways, whether it be through grants, through CMAQ funds and things like that, which is congestion mitigation funds, to actually do the deployments that we're doing. I'm very happy to say we're on target. And we're actually ready to bring about 200 more devices from the connected vehicle space online on our corridors. So as you look out, these are opportunities. We look at these not only as just how many do we have. So it's great to say, you know, we have 300 RSUs, we have all of these infrastructure, but if you're not using them, there's very little value to that, just like with any infrastructure component. So what we do is we do a vast amount of internal investigation. We talk to stakeholders as well, and we look at what are actually the challenges that we are trying to solve on our infrastructure. It could be different crash types, different scenarios that are happening. So you can see on this, we show, just picked a couple corridors and what applications we're looking at to solve real world problems. As we move forward into that, this is an outlay. Again, this is a snapshot. There's a bunch more that we obviously can't put them all on the same graph, but just to show you the diversity of the area of coverage in Southeast Michigan. So this shows some of the partnerships that we have and that we've embarked upon. Some of those, I'll get into the DIRC one in particular, but we've done things with companies for platooning. We work a lot with the military as well. We've done things with them platooning on our freeway system, as well as internationally across the Blue Water Bridge between the US and Canada. We also partnered with Magna and Continental to do a binational autonomous drive. It was the first one in the country. And then also partnered with General Motors in signal phase and timing up in Macomb County to provide SPAT and map information at intersections. And then collaboration with 3M doing a construction project that we did in Oakland County to test autonomous vehicles with construction signs, barrels, and pavement markings. There's many more than this. Unfortunately, some of those we don't talk about. So these you've all seen in the press. Those are the ones that we can show. A significant amount of the partnerships we do, whether it be startup, whether it be big companies, it really doesn't matter, is that we actually keep disclosure of those and we don't share those until we go public. So getting into the DIRC pilot, so we had a fabulous opportunity arise with DIRC, and you'll hear from Will as well. It was a lot of things we'll walk through so that you guys can understand from a startup perspective, what does it really take to go from the beginning until the end? And this has been a project success, to say the least, and we're actually doing a lot of work right now around the next steps and looking at the data that we're getting out of the intersection. So we went through the installation, and then we also were able to, for any of you that were at maybe at the ITS America annual meeting that was in Detroit this past summer, if you were able to ride on their demonstration, it is currently active and deployed. So why are we, as MDOT, I get this question pretty much everywhere we go, why are we interested in the connected and automated vehicle space? Why are we interested in building startups and partnerships and things like that? We are because of these numbers, right? We are to reduce crashes, save lives, lower costs for, whether it be insurance, whether it be your vehicles, whatever that is, to make a better and safer lifestyle here around mobility and safety. So as we launched into down in Detroit, of course, when you're going to do an initial grant, why not pick the most complex intersection you can possibly find to see what you can do with it? So we did that and really looked and identified the use cases around what we were trying to do, what we were trying to accomplish, and find the best location to do that. And that was in downtown Detroit. The two applications are focused on, which we'll get into more details about, is red light violation and the vulnerable road user. And then we are watching it in real time. We're getting data from that today. And again, he'll dig into that. I don't want to steal his thunder. So we had to identify and go through and identify objectives that we were looking for in the project. What are the things that we're trying to accomplish? What's the capabilities of what exists? Again, like Amanda talked about, and I think it's very important to understand, is from a startup perspective, as you're coming in, you have to have your head around what you're trying to actually do. You can't do everything. You're not going to solve every problem there is, but you can have a target of where you're trying to go, what do you have, and what can you actually solve? Maybe. So this is a timeline of really, I just want to walk through this in a little bit of detail to give everybody a better understanding of how these work. Again, this is a perspective from MDOT. So this is really based around the deployment that we did with Dirk. So again, I think I covered earlier, we had conversations with Dirk. We met with them. We had a casual conversation around where's MDOT trying to go? Where's the state of Michigan trying to go? And then understand too, where's Dirk? Where are they trying to go? Where they already have deployments? What's the success of those and what's happening? Then move into finding synergies there and moving into, okay, well, what are areas we can collaborate on? Where do our objectives align? Where are we trying to go, and how can we do that together? Once we establish those, and again, these are multiple meetings that happen, multiple conversations back and forth, and then to walk into design. So when we identified the location here in Detroit, there was a lot of work done to do that and figure out, okay, well, what do we need to actually do that? There's contracting that has to get in place. There's financial things that have to be taken care of. I'm very happy to say MDOT facilitated those. It's new. It's not roads. It's not bridges. It's not the things we do and have done for many, many years. And our folks were able to work with MEDC and actually facilitate all of that through contractually for us. So we got that in place, and then we moved into installation. So we had a contract, we did the installation. We had the Dirk and their partners were on site for some of the aligning and things that needed to be done with the infrastructure, and then start moving into actually testing to make sure it was working, and be able to showcase that at the ITS America annual meeting. And then moving forward from there is now we are into the next phases. So this was not a one and done. I can tell you firsthand from my perspective, I don't look at any project as a one and done project. I look at it as steps. There's always steps to get to the end. And what can we do, and what are the milestones to create those, and what do we get out of each of those steps? So we've now moved into the next phase, or maybe the third phase by now, that we are doing with that project. We're looking at the data that's coming out of it. We're looking at, to say from an agency perspective, what is the safety and mobility things that we can do with that? Is there things we can merge that with internal processes, internal assets, and things like that, where we can put that data to use? Can we understand why maybe crashes are happening? In some cases, we don't know as an agency if an intersection is, unless we have crash numbers, which is injuries and fatalities. We don't want those. We want to know, where is it possibly happening? Where are those near misses happening? What's causing it? And we dig into those. And this is an opportunity for us to be learning, again, at one intersection. However, we're looking at, okay, is this something we can expand? And are there other technologies out there that maybe do the same thing and or can be merged together, where now we're getting advantages of multiple systems? So we'll continue to build that out. We've got a lot of things in the works. Unfortunately, some of those we're not able to talk about at this time. But I do want you guys to understand from a startup perspective is that always be thinking the next steps as well. So as you have discussions, whether it be with us, whether it be with Next Energy, whoever it be with, set your milestones and understand where you're actually trying to get to, and then figure out your path to get there. So that's how I manage all of my projects, and again, the samples. But if you guys have any questions, I mean, we're gonna take questions and answers here. But I'm always happy afterwards, and you can always follow up with me via email to answer any of those. Very happy to do that. So thank you very much. I'll let Will dig into the technical part of their.
Thank you very much, Michelle and Amanda. So I'll dive in a little bit to the project that we did, some of the key lessons that we've learned from our deployment, some of the video and footage that we've been able to collect, and the analytics and insights that we've been able to do because of that. But one thing I wanted to point out was that this process that PlanetM and MDOT have put together made this extremely simple for us. And I think for one key reason, it aligns very much with the contracting process, particularly as you're looking at working with governments or as you're looking at working in this type of an environment. A lot of the steps that we had to do with the pilot grant mimicked the contracting process. What is the timeline? What are the deliverables? Does your technology work? And I think that helped us, as we put that together, understand that we were going to achieve the outcomes that we intended. So at DIRC, we focus on using artificial intelligence and vehicle-to-everything, V2X technologies to predict and eliminate car crashes. We focus on predicting events, near misses, and collisions in what we call the dilemma zone, about 2 seconds before there is an incident. And that's why we use artificial intelligence. Simpler way to think of it is we think of ourselves as the brain on top of the V2 anything, whether it's infrastructure, vehicle-to-vehicle communications, et cetera. Our company is a Dubai and Southeast Michigan company. We came to Detroit as part of the TechStars program last year in 2017. And part of what we wanted to do was take the technology that we'd proven out in Dubai and bring it to the United States. For us, Michigan was a key focus area because of its investment and its strategy around connected roadways and its relationship and proximity to the automotive sector and ITS. So we had tested technology. We knew that we wanted to expand that to the US. We knew Michigan was an attractive customer for us, or a potential customer for us. And we decided to use the pilot grant process, and we were lucky enough to become the first pilot grant recipient. So as Michelle pointed out, we deployed our technology live at the intersection of Jefferson and Randolph. Most of you, since you're here, are probably familiar. For those of you who are on the webinar, you may not be. But as Michelle mentioned, it's an extremely complex environment. Jefferson is a major boulevard that connects two highways that sort of transit around Detroit. Randolph is a major throughway through the city. And so we have about 12 pedestrian and vehicle lanes of traffic that we're now monitoring in real time to predict the outcomes. Ultimately, getting this deployment and demonstrating the capability of this technology and how it could, in fact, predict car crashes before they happen and use active safety techniques to prevent them enabled us to be named Best of ITS America, a finalist for the Best of ITS award. It also allowed us a good opportunity to engage with and interact with potential partners and customers, which have now turned into business relationships and expansion opportunities for DIRC, including what we'll soon be able to announce around another municipal deployment with another US state, as well as several partnerships with automotive companies, tier ones, and ITS companies. Part of why we were able to do that was because we had a live demonstration here in Detroit that we could put them in a car and drive them to. And that was thanks to the pilot grants. So this is the intersection. I mentioned that it's complex. You can see here, this is about as crazy of a design of a roadway as you could imagine. You have 12 vehicle lanes and crossings and pedestrian crossings. It's right outside the Ren-Sen. It's at the tunnel to Windsor. So it's a very complex and in many spots blind intersection. Part of the reason we selected it, in addition to the complexity, was that it was high volume and it was high crash. Consistently, this is one of the worst 5 intersections in terms of number of reported crashes each year for the last 5 years. And so we wanted to use that as an opportunity to show the accuracy as well as then the impact that we could have. So now I'm going to show a couple of videos from our deployments, because part of what we were able to do was learn a lot about this intersection and demonstrate the technology. This first video is one of the applications we have for red light violation prediction. It's the ability to predict cars that are going to run a red light before they do it, and with enough time to warn cars that may be at risk because of that. So in this case, you can see it's at night. It'll be pretty hard to see here on the screen, but I'll sort of give you an explanation of what you're going to see. This is one of the cameras that we have deployed at that intersection and one of the approaches. We're tapped into the signal, so we're actually pulling the signal phase and timing. We know when it's going to go red. We know when it's going to go green. And we're recording every single vehicle so that we can predict what it intends to do with enough time to prevent a near miss or a collision. And what you'll see as we start this video is 3 videos approach this red light. They're identified as 21, 23, and 25. and we're trying to predict which cars, if any, are going to violate the intersection. So what you see here is 3 vehicles approaching the intersection. Now we've broadcasted that 21 intends to violate, 23 and 25 are exhibiting non-violator behavior, and we have now communicated that to any car with the ability to receive that message so that they can avoid the risk. Another big key road safety condition is vulnerable road user intent. One of the most challenging aspects of road safety is what are we as pedestrians going to do? I would say it's true for conventional vehicles and drivers. It's also true for autonomous vehicles. So we use all different types of sensors. We fuse them together to understand everything that's happening in the roadway and be able to predict on anything that's happening in that roadway. So the second video that I'll show, you'll actually see an example of how we're using and predicting intent and broadcasting the different phases of crossing for a pedestrian in this case. We have our pedestrian crossing from one end of the crosswalk to the median to the other end of the crosswalk. And signalized by the blue box, we're broadcasting pedestrian in crosswalk. As signalized by the red box, we're actually broadcasting the intent. Now that intent is what becomes very important in terms of being able to avoid the accident or avoid a near miss. And then a final application or a final video that I'll show here is our ability to detect and communicate crashes. So in this case, you're actually going to see we were able to record, if you watch this video, this vehicle pulls into the left lane and it gets slammed into by that SUV right behind it. Now that's important obviously for being able to triage. It's important for being able to understand what that impact is going to have on road lane closures, cleanups, et cetera. You can communicate that information to first responders, et cetera, et cetera. But what's also important is being able to contextualize that information. So now that we have sensors all the way around the intersection that we're tapped into, and when we're running our algorithms on all the different feeds, we can now understand why things happen. And so that video you just saw is going to be here on the left. We have a different angle with the exact same video at the exact same time on the right. And what you'll end up seeing is why this crash happened. And you can see this car pulls a little bit too far into the lane, and this white pickup truck has to avoid it at the last second. So the car stops short. The SUV behind it didn't have time to stop. As we go back and analyze why that happened, this is a pretty blind intersection. Maybe the car that pulled a little bit too far into the lane was obstructed view. Maybe it wasn't. Now we can start to understand why things are happening, and then we can start to determine causes and fixes for it. Sorry. In addition to that, because we're tapped in the infrastructure, we're also able to now, as Michelle mentioned, help provide all sorts of analytics and understanding of what's going on in the roadways. This, for example, is the usage of the lanes by pedestrians and vulnerable road users by different times of day. We can segment this by any hour, we can segment this by any time interval, we can segment this for any approach or all the approaches, and then we can understand roadway usage, counts, et cetera. In addition, we can also then take that and apply it to vehicle calculations and vehicle counts, and understand more granular levels of what's going on within the intersection to understand systemic risk, potential near miss reasons, as well as usage behaviors. So what you see in the top left here is actually individual lane utilization on one of the approaches. We know how many cars are in which lane at which time of day. We can drill down into that for any amount of time interval or segment. We can understand which lanes and why. We can understand if they're large cars or small cars, or the buses or the non-buses. And that can be used for a variety of reasons, most tactically counts, but also for route planning, bus pickups and bus drop-offs, pedestrian risks and things like that. The other graphs here also show roadway utilization, tunnel utilization, may have implications for demand of the tunnel, may have implications for congestion on the roadways. And we're able to pull all of that by being on the infrastructure. We're able to learn what's valuable by then working with MDOT as part of this program to understand where we can provide additional analytics. So ultimately, that's DIRC, and that's what we've been able to do with the pilot grant. I would say we're very thankful for the opportunity, and I think we have time for Q&A now, right?
Yeah, we have about 12 minutes for questions. So are you going? Yeah, otherwise I can't see it from here. 10 years ago I could, but today I can't see that. Okay. So while we're doing that, I have a couple of questions here. So Amanda, one of the first questions is between DIRC and the first 3 winners of the first round, all of the partners were forms of government, and whether it's city or state government. Can the startup have a private sector partner, say they want to demonstrate their technology or pilot it on a campus or a specific application that might be very important to a private entity?
Yes, great question. It's a bit coincidental, but it is not. And also, I mean, it's a natural fit to have a public entity as part of your deployment. But certainly a private entity could be a partner. And again, it could be multiple partners. So you might actually have a public and a private partner that comes to the table as well. It could be maybe a large employer in a city who's looking to solve a parking challenge for their employees or whatnot. So yes, the partners can look and very different from pilot to pilot.
So then the next question on the partners is, so if a startup has a great idea and they haven't, finalized or identified their partner as they're thinking about applying for the grant, how would PlanetM and others in the ecosystem support finding pilot partners for them?
So any startup who's interested in applying for the startup grant related to the pilot side of things in particular certainly can reach out to myself or anybody from our team to talk through what your pilot is. If you haven't identified a Michigan-based partner, once we have a conversation with you and understand what your technology is, we can potentially make recommendations and introductions to potential partners. That can take some time, so we do encourage you to start that process right away. And as I mentioned earlier, my presentation as well, though, before applying, you do need to have your partners in place as well as identified the source of the funding from one or more of your partners.
So, Will, with respect to partners in that, can you describe your experience working with MDOT? I mean, as far as a startup, new technology, working with a division of government to deploy something for the first time, and what was that experience?
Sure. So I think I could say this now. So we were scared at first because we've heard horror stories about working with governments. And honestly, we were extremely pleased by the process. It was so simple from our perspective. I think part of that was Michigan is a state that's been investing in technology. It has a large technology budget for roadways, road improvements. It has a stated strategy for road projects and for safety projects. So we had sort of selected down to Michigan because of that. But then we still had no idea what to expect. It's been an unbelievably seamless process from our perspective. There are things that happen in the background that we had no idea. And for us, it was just like contracting with a normal private party.
Okay, so for folks in the audience, now is your turn to ask questions, and we have some questions online.
They're all just logistical at this point. So we can take some questions from the audience. Does anyone have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Is it possible to multiple locations for your pilot project, which would be multiple cities, including partner with numbers of cities,
Yeah, for those that might be on the webinar, there's a question in the audience about, is it possible for the startup to apply and deploy the technology or the solution in multiple locations? And the answer is yes. It really boils down to, frankly, your budget. So, you can have $1 million budget, but you understand based on today what our range is. So you would need to have identified the partners that can help you scale to multiple cities. But the answer is yes.
I think the only thing I would encourage from an owner-operator perspective of those areas is to have a scaling plan for that. So you may deploy at location 1 and then say, okay, we're going to go to 2 and 3. So I don't want to say prioritize those, but I would say figure out the things you don't know. You're always going to find things you don't know, regardless of how good your technology is or our infrastructure is. There's always challenges. Will can tell you we had to work through some for the deployment we did. So scale that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually appealing from an owner-operator's perspective to see that thought process to it, to know that we have to collaboratively, regardless of who your partners are, I don't care if it's us or any other entity, is you have to understand what you don't know. There will be challenges on all sides. So I guess that would be my recommendation from perspective of doing a ton of these is scalability is good, and it's not a bad thing, right? Have a plan for all of that, but have a process to get through it.
Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Yes.
We have one right here.
Oh, yeah. Can you give a example of the 25% match? Like a common example in terms of, is it cash or for the to apply for the grant?
Yeah, so the answer to that question is it's complex, so it depends on the pilot. In the case of Haas Alert in Grand Rapids, part of our round one grant recipients, it's about a $85,000 grant. Basically they had to come up with $25,000 essentially based on, and as I said, it's not an equal 75-25. It's going to vary pilot to pilot, but essentially they went back to their partners, which was the police, fire, and EMS. And those three entities in the city of Grand Rapids split the cost of the match. So it does have to be in the form of a cash contribution.
And I think we had another question here.
Sure. Robert Adams, Progressive Web Apps. I want to go back to a point you made about multiple phases and how you need to stage it in. Is there an automatic, or if you will, preference for subsequent grants for multiple phase projects? So you demonstrate deliverables for the first phase, and will there be additional funding to say, let's talk about additional things we can do for deployment along that same line?
So I have experience with both. I have experienced a lot of those depending on, in some cases, when you look at different grant opportunities and projects, is based on the readiness of the technology. So in some cases, we will do milestones. So when you reach the first milestone, then we will, contract for the second. There are ones where it's multiple locations, right? The technology is ready, the technology is the same and similar. However, every location you will go to is going to have some differences. Whether you're deploying, as I deploy on our corridors, as you saw on that map, every location is different. I cannot stress that enough to different folks on the webinar, even just from a regular deployment, not even talking new technology, things that we're doing in places. There's a challenge everywhere you go. It's not as easy as people, tend to make it seem. So it's great and it's good, and we learn a lot through it. I just recommend, in the case of scaling, to bite off in pieces and realize and prove out certain things before you add other variables to it. It helps identify where your challenges are and work those out before you continue to add to that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so another thing within the grant, the deployments and the pilots are not designed to be multi-year. They're designed to be, 3 to 4 to 5 months, along with data collection and reporting. So think about, what it is that you want to prove out. How are you going to do that, and how are you going to report on it? There's nothing wrong with having multiple phases after that, after the contract is ended with partners. But also, be focused on, don't bite off more than you can chew, or that actually will get reviewed in a negative manner. So think about it that way.
To add to what Jim was just saying, I think there's important enough to take a moment just to talk about the timeline and the process a bit. So since there's 3 rounds, it's approximately 3 months per round. So the next, say for example, February 1st is the next deadline. The first several weeks of that is a review process. So there's an internal review process and an external review process. We do have over 15 public and private sector experts in their field, reviewers who are scoring and providing feedback to your application. So again, that's why I was mentioning earlier about, really making sure that it's really clear what the problem you're solving and what your solution will do and how it's unique, because you've got a diverse set of reviewers who are providing feedback to us. We sit back down as a team and go through every single score and every single comment and have a discussion about every single application that comes through. From that point forward, once we make the selection and notification, there's about a 6 to 8 week period, as I mentioned earlier, that you'll get under contract with Next Energy. And the idea behind that then is that your technology should be able to be deployed within 4 months from that period from being put under contract, and then reporting back within 12 months of that process.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but I think from a startup's perspective, one of the big challenges that you run into is there's so much you want to do and there's so much you want to learn, right? And I think being very focused and very structured and winning a customer is the goal of this pilot grant, and winning a customer that you want to build into a strong relationship. That customer doesn't go away at the end of the program. So be focused on what you want to achieve, the outcomes that you're going to prove your value to each other, and then build a relationship during that process.
Anyone else from the audience?
Okay, so with that, we're going to transition into the testing portion. So Mark.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Chappett. I'm the Vice President of Facility Operations and Construction at the American Center for Mobility. We're excited to be one of 3 test facilities to partner with PlanetM on this grant program. A lot of technology is advancing around connected and automated vehicles. Again, ACM was established in the spring of 2016. We went to the drawing board for design and construction in 2017. We actually opened our facility December 11th of last year. So we've been up and running for almost a year now. And again, very excited about the opportunities and what we're able to provide as far as capabilities for testing activity. Some pictures of some of the facilities we have. I'm really going to talk a little bit more about the facility itself and what we provide for test activity than I am some of the technologies surrounding the testing. So again, many facilities we have. We also have a number of testing equipment that we provide to supplement testing. We test all kinds of different technologies. We're testing vehicles. We're also an infrastructure test facility as well. So if you're looking at developing maybe EV charging, you may be developing some type of V2I technology on the infrastructure side, you have the ability to test that out at ACM and probably some of these other facilities as well. So we are not just a vehicle test facility. It's just something to keep in mind. We're also able to support testing in the full range of automation, from the early basic ADAS type technologies to full automation where the vehicle is making all decisions and actually executing, driving, and doing everything on its own. So again, full range of automation that we provide support for at ACM. Also, as you look at the evolution of these technologies with the vehicle, the testing is moving from traditional types of disciplines of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and maybe some computers to really across the gamut. You're getting into civil engineering, you're getting into transportation planning. You start to talk about V2I type technologies and the communications that surround that, the move to 5G, do you use DSRC technology, do you move to cell V2X? Again, all of these things are kind of unknown and still are to be determined. And facilities like ours really are to help industry develop technologies, understand where things are going, and accelerate the development. So one of the challenges that you may find to deploy technologies on vehicles in an on-road scenario really is a challenge. Again, the unlimited numbers of scenarios you need to run through, the millions of miles you need to drive just to experience the different challenges that you'll need to understand and do the programming within the vehicle to successfully navigate in a safe manner. Again, experiencing system critical situations, they don't happen every day on the road. You can go and drive thousands of miles, hundreds of thousands of miles, and really never engage in a critical scenario or a challenging driving scenario that is really challenging to the AV technology. So having the proving grounds in a controlled scenario where you can create those opportunities for those challenging activities is really one of the benefits of doing this type of testing and product development in proving grounds. Scenarios are not easily reproducible on the public roadway. You have laws and regulations. There's certain things you can't do on the public roads that you can do in a controlled environment and maintain safety. And again, the dangerous piece and the complications of some of the tests you need to run vehicles and the different systems through to validate their ability to operate. Really, it's just challenging to do on the open road. So the test facilities, the proving grounds are really a safe environment to perform those functions. At ACM, we really combine a 3-tiered methodology for testing to help accelerate the development of the technology, balancing computer simulation. We're using Siemens, the TAS International product, a pre-scan on the computer simulation side, coupled with actual test activity in a closed environment on the proving ground, and then going in the on-road components. Michelle talked about all the different deployments that MDOT has on the public roadways. U of M has a significant deployment in Ann Arbor. And again, those types of open road, on-road environments can be used for testing for certain types of scenarios. You couple that with these other two methods of testing. Again, it's just a way to advance accelerate the development and prove out your technology to get to a validation component. So typical proving grounds are usually single vehicle intended. They're just to test and validate the operations of the vehicle, durability tests, ride and handling. Traditional proving grounds are of that nature. When you start to look at what's necessary to test and validate excuse me, connected and automated vehicles, a next generation of proving ground is necessary. You're testing vehicle sensors and how they interact. You need to test on real-world environments, real-world roadways, and the real-world infrastructure, the ITS and communications infrastructure that you're going to experience in the public roads. Those facilities don't traditionally exist in a traditional vehicle proving ground, maybe with an oval track and some other type of infrastructure. Also testing with large amounts of vehicles. And you have to do it in a real-world environment. You need urban areas, you need intersections, so you're testing vehicles with other vehicles in a normal driving situation. Those types of facilities don't exist at a true vehicle proving ground. So these automated vehicle, next generation, purpose-built proving grounds really are necessary to help advance the development of this technology. And then dealing with other road users, getting pedestrians and bicyclists. You know, the outcry of, not outcry, but the expansion of use of scooters in a lot of the urban areas. Those are things you can test in a controlled, safe environment in proving grounds such as ACM. And again, another major component for us as a open facility is bringing multiple companies together. A lot of different OEMs and tier ones are developing technologies on their own to work independently. They can all come to ACM and work together and demonstrate interoperability and demonstrate the ability to work together, which will be critical before each of them roll out and put their vehicles and their technologies to market. Again, ACM as a proving ground has three pillars: product development with testing, we're working on establishing voluntary standards with industry, and then a focus on education. Here are our founding partners, primarily state of Michigan-based, MEDC and MDOT, along with U of M. M-City and ACM have a real strong partnership. We're going to be working together where U of M more has early stage and research-related testing, and ACM is more in the advanced research and product development. Just a little bit of a view of our facility. We do have 500 acres and many different test environments. As you put your applications together, you'll basically engage with ACM and Intertech, our operating partner, to really talk through what you're trying to accomplish with your testing. We have multiple locations and multiple environments to conduct testing to accomplish what you need, and we'll help guide you in the appropriate place on site. So we have some flyers out back. You can see a little bit of the actual facilities and the test environments we have available. Again, real-world infrastructure, roadways and bridges, real-world ITS and communications infrastructure as well. And then there's also some information on some of our future environments that we're looking to build out. Our new environment that we're looking at building by spring of next year is a new rural road environment, again, getting a little bit of a different perspective from highway driving or an urban type setting. Again, combining these three-tiered methodology of testing to accelerate the development. ACM really would not be successful without the support of our service partners. Intertech on board as our track operator. AT&T is an exclusive cellular provider. We're working with them to develop and roll out a 5G sub-6 system by next year. Microsoft is on board as our data manager and looking at providing cloud services and potentially analytic support and services over time. And a new partnership with Siemens. This is a two-phase partnership, one on the PLM side with TAS International in the simulation component, and then Siemens Mobility as a sponsor and investor in ACM. So as I wind down here, this is just a little bit of an overview. So if you don't know, ACM was built on the old B-24 bomber plant at Willow Run. The plant itself was 5 million square feet. It was the largest plant in the world in the early 1940s when it was built. In the background, you can see Willow Run Airport, which is still an operable airport. So ACM purchased the 330 acres from the bomber plant in partnership with MDOT and Washtenaw County Road Commission. We have another 120 so acres for that we're using of actual public road rights of way. So just a little bit of a view of how the site has changed in 2016. The demolition of the plant site left an open facility, and we are now moving into locating our facility here within this footprint. And all the white lines are either test track activity or rerouting of public roads on the system. A little bit of the build out, some of the future areas we have, residential, commercial areas, some off-road activity. We had some discussions with the military on off-road facilities to build. And again, we can get into some more information on the website and the handout to explain a little bit about the facilities we have. And we'll just do a little quick video here and I will wrap up.
All right, good morning. Oh, good afternoon, excuse me. We're in the home stretch though. I have it on good authority that Craig actually lectures for a living. So he's gonna take us home. I'm Greg McGuire. I'm currently the lab director for MCity, which is an initiative at the University of Michigan. I've got about a 20-year career in and out of startups, starting in car sharing at Zipcar 20 years ago now, before I got sucked into academia, where I can't escape. But MCity is effectively a public-private partnership. It's a little bit different. We're not just a test facility, but we're really looking at the whole mobility ecosystem. And I'd like to show you a quick video. We don't have the royalties licensing budget that Mark does, but I'm going to cut that off a little bit early there. So, when these industry companies and research teams aren't using MCity, news is so can you. Too. So, we're about 10x smaller than American Center for Mobility, and we'll get into sort of how I think you can leverage that relationship in a few minutes. But we've got a whole plethora of infrastructure and equipment, electrons, all designed to help you test your connected or automated vehicle system, and to do it in a repeatable and controlled way while collecting data all the while. So what are we focusing on right now? I'll just give you a little snippet. I know I've only got a few minutes. We're focusing right now on realism. So how can we make our environment look like the towns and communities that we live in? This is everything from crops to abandoned undergrad bikes to movable curbing and road construction, which we don't do too much of in Michigan, but other states, I'm told, have a lot of road construction. This is including signalized intersections equipped with V2I technologies like DSRC, 5G currently installed, and coming hopefully soon some cellular V2X capabilities. Software control, of course, over everything in the environment so that you can really repeat that testing and you don't have variance in the infrastructure that throws off your testing capabilities. Focusing on control of rail crossings. We have lots of those. Those are a high fatality intersection in this country. So we have an urban gated crossing, again, software controllable, you can actuate it, and a rural ungated crossing. We're focusing on collecting data. That's probably one of the most important things, right? If you go out and run your tests, you need to really be able to go back and to use Mark's pathway through the test cycle. If you're in a software in the loop, hardware in the loop, pure simulation environment, and you want to come all the way out to the roads, you want to know that the testing and learning that you're doing in simulation is actually having value. So by collecting good data when you're validating those tests, you can determine that. So this is everything like weather data, under which what conditions when I was running my tests, wind, solar, irradiance, all those sorts of things. What V2X messages were flying through the air. Coming next year early, we'll be looking at some very high fidelity sensors in the intersections so that you can get down to the 1 or 2 centimeter level of ground truth for understanding positions and vehicle dynamics when you're running a test. Everything is connected to the University of Michigan's backbone, fiber backbone, since the early days of the internet. And so, you can connect into that, bring your own sensors, and build up a network very quickly in our facility. We also run a series of research platforms for ostensibly research, but also can be used by startups and other groups for testing, new sensor development. If you have control systems that you'd like to test, or data collection that you'd like to do on coatings, lane markings, all kinds of things. This fleet can be used and controlled, and we have some postdocs and things who can help you get up and running on that. Coming soon, scenario support. So we're looking at kind of the future of what testing looks like for high levels of automation, and we've proposed some research in that area that's ongoing now, and should be released open source, I think, in the next year, on our way to standards development and things like that ACM works on. So we've got about half a dozen companies that have built very accurate models of MCity. On the left, or is it the right, is the simulated environment. Okay, it's the right. Here's another shot of that. So you can run in virtual MCity on any of these vendors' products, including TAS and CarSim and RightHook and Metamoto and others, and then you can come out and actually validate those tests in the real thing. I'd like to point out, this facility is about 30 acres. It's pretty small. You're going to go about 45 miles an hour max in there, and you know, it's great for those early technology readiness levels when you're working on your first prototype, when you have, you know, constrained budget or a confined a set of tests you need to do. When you get to the later stages of commercialization, you know, then ACM is really there to pick you up and keep you going. And we're, you know, we're working on a pipeline there so that testing and other standards and things that can be tested and implemented in MCity can carry over into those subsequent places like ACM. And that is all. Craig, take us home.
Thanks. Afternoon. And so if Greg was complaining about his marketing budget, this one's going to look like it was put together by an engineering professor, only because that's what I've been for quite a long time. But I'm Craig Hoff. I'm the Dean of the College of Engineering, and I want to give you a little introduction to the General Motors Mobility Research Center at Kettering University. So if you're local, you will understand Kettering University. We have a great reputation in the automobile industry, but if you're outstate or out country, a few words to explain us. We're a private university that for many years we went by General Motors Institute. We were a fully owned subsidy of the General Motors Corporation, and we existed to provide engineering talent and management talent to the automobile industry, General Motors in particular, right? And we are coming up on our 100th anniversary, and we're having a big party next October. You're all invited, so if you're up in Flint, stop by. And again, we're all about talent development, and we got about 2,500 students at the bachelor and master's level. At any given time, half of them are on campus, and the other half is working in the industry as an intern. And this is a very unique way of doing an education. We really strongly believe in partnerships with companies, and we're in it together to develop engineering talent. And as you start your businesses and you think about what you're trying to do, you got technological problems you have to solve, but you're also going to have this huge issue of talent development, right? You need to have the employees that are going to be able to do this for you. So we work with 500 different companies, and we'd love to have a few more along the way. Back in the day, well, first of all, General Motors did not start in Detroit. It started 60 miles up the road in Flint, Michigan. And Flint, Michigan, back in the 20s and the 30s, was the Silicon Valley of the day. Inventors were flocking there. Investors were flocking there. They were building this corporation called General Motors. And eventually, for many different reasons, they ended up pulling out of the city. So on that one photo on the left, you can see a sea of factories, hundreds of thousands of laborers and management working there. Kettering University was part of that complex. It was called Chevy in the Hole. They pulled out in the 80s, and for 20 years, we were left with the brownfield. Well, what do you do with the brownfield? Well, you can't dig a hole in the ground in order to build a foundation for a new building, but we've been pitching the idea for a long time about putting in a test track, and so that's what we ended up putting in. That facility was not designed to be a autonomous vehicle test center. We were looking for a low-speed vehicle dynamic center. So you see toward the left is a 3-acre vehicle dynamics pad. It's perfectly flat. It's got a minimum 1% slope just to get water runoff. If you want to flood it so you can do some low mu testing in that regard, well, you can do that too. We have those facilities. And then on the right of the photo, as I look at it, you'll see the handling loops. And the idea there is to exercise your suspension. So that said, we built the facility, and we had a couple things in mind. The first thing we had in mind is, from an educational standpoint, if I want to teach vehicle dynamics, why not go out and show you vehicle dynamics? So that was number one. And number two is the idea we want to work with our partners. And honestly, we heard of a lot of partners that were tier ones and tier two, and it's very expensive to get access to the big three test facilities, and they're out testing in their parking lots. And my president always cringes when I bring it up, but my marketing slogan is, it's better than a parking lot. But the truth be told, a lot of people are doing it that way. So in terms of facilities, you can get a little different view of it. It's 21 acres total. The 3-acre vehicle dynamics pad, it's lit, so you can work at night if you want. The handling loops, if you use the pad, you can run about half-mile loops at that. Again, it's a low-speed facility, so 45, 50 miles an hour is the best you're going to do. One of the things that I wasn't sure about early on was there's a corner of that loop that goes up a hill. It's about a 30-foot hill. And that actually adds some interesting perturbations to the system. And in addition to just turning around corners, you have to deal with the fact that you have an elevation change and all the effects that that has on the powertrain. There's things that you can't see, and like the other facilities, we have a dedicated 4G LTE system that the university runs. We have DSRC, we have GPS reference station, we have Wi-Fi connectivity. So we have a lot of electronic infrastructure to support the actual physical infrastructure. And the latest addition to the facility is a building, and we have a couple garage bays in there, and we got meeting rooms. And one thing that's kind of interesting is there's a catwalk. You can see there are high windows near the top of that building. And the idea was that you can actually watch what's going on the facility. And we got a lot of feedback from people going, wow, we don't get to do that anywhere else. So it gives you I guess if you come out with a team, you can put some of the team up in that upper area. And yeah, that's basically the presentation. Our goal here is partnerships. We partner with 600 different universities. We do all kinds of, just to compare our school to University of Michigan. Everyone's heard of University of Michigan. It's a large, comprehensive state school, large research focus. Our focus is on talent development. We're a private university. We work with our partners on applied projects. And so I'm actually going to shout out to Michigan Next Energy, because 15 years ago, I was working in fuel cells and I got support from Next Energy back in the day. And now we're working on autonomous vehicles as well. And we're part of a competition. Is SAE and General Motors gave 8 schools in North America a Chevy Bolt and said, you got 3 years to make it to level 5 or level 4 automation. It's an interesting challenge. We're working on it really hard. So anyways, love to partner with you. And if you were interested in using the facility, it's good for early development. The idea would be you could do some early shakeout in our place and then move up the ranks to ACM when your testing needs become bigger than what we can support. So that's what I got.
Thank you. Okay, so this is amazing because we went through 3 test sites, 2 program introductions, and a case study, and we still have 15 minutes left for questions. So we expect lots of questions from the audience, and if there's any engineers in here, and I see engineers, and you see 3 test sites, you got to have questions. So I have a couple of the first to start out. Craig, Greg, and Mark, this is for all 3 of you. So I'm a startup, and I have this wonderful new technology, and I want to test it at one of your facilities. Walk us through the process. Is it like, oh, here's the keys and have at it? How do your staffs and your organizations interact with the clients? And what support do you provide?
Well, the first thing we'll do is we'll have you submit a request for the type of testing you want to do. And we had a company come in and they wanted to do testing at 120 miles an hour, which was interesting, but no. And so we will work with you and discuss what we're capable of. And if we can't actually accommodate the test that you're proposing, we're going to suggest someplace else where you can do the test.
Yeah, that's true for us too. We've got a track services agreement it's a sort of every company that comes out signs the same thing, so we don't allow modifications despite lawyers' repeated attempts. But it's pretty straightforward. You sign that, and then we work with you on a track request. We do look at safety plans. We don't, in terms of vehicle safety, or other personnel safety, that's on you to develop plans for that, which you should be doing anyway. We have some test course safety rules and things that you have to abide by. We have some services available. You can use our staff, by the hour, that sort of thing if you need to. But some companies want that or want a lot of assistance, and others, have got it under control and can go through. So we kind of let you lead that conversation and are there to help. And of course, we've got a pretty deep bench of like Kettering of faculty and others who can come in and help if you need to. But for IP reasons, if you want no help and you want everyone out of the facility, that's fine too.
ACM is a little different. Being a larger facility at 500 acres, we do have 8 different test environments. So there are many different locations you may be able to perform the same test. So Intertech, as our operating partner, provides engineering and technical support for test activity. They'll help with test planning, help understand what you're trying to accomplish, and then guide you onto the proper location and environment within the facility. They all have different rates, so we'll try to get you to the most economical and the most available to accommodate your needs. So again, most of the interaction on track use is through discussions with Intertech. Same thing, we've got a user agreement, insurance requirements and things of that nature. And again, all the test planning is done in advance. Safety protocols, the safety plan gets approved. And again, we run an a la carte basis as well, both for the facility, environments to rent, and then also the services that are made available.
Okay, so another question here. What's the typical time for a test? So how long is a client on site? Is it days? Is it weeks? Months? How does that work? How quick do you get in and out?
So for ACM, there's a 30-day minimum booking time frame for non-investors. So a little bit of a challenge. You have to do a little bit of planning for that. We usually rent the facility in 4-hour blocks, so half days. We have worked with PlanetM to offer maybe hour blocks or 2-hour blocks to accommodate this special program. So if you don't have an elaborate 4-hour type of test, we'll be able to work with you within the context of the grant, not only providing discounts for the fees for the facility and the services, but also breaking from our traditional restrictions on time to accommodate the grant program.
That's true for us as well. We typically will do a 4-hour block. That's kind of the minimum. We are, for startups, we are allowing you to share the facility if you want. So if you go find another startup who can use some other piece of the facility while you're in there, great. And we can even cut the cost then by 1 or 2/3 for you, depending on that. The big companies tend to fight with each other, so we don't let them do that. but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, typically we'd book a 4-hour block, a half-day block, but again, we're flexible on this thing. We don't have any minimums, so if you just want one afternoon, you want to come in, you want to do your thing, that's fine. We have other companies that'll buy blocks of 200 hours at a time, and then what'll end up happening is we give you a little discount on that because it's a bulk purchase, and then it's a matter of booking it, and the question is availability, right? We tend to give priority to companies that are involved with us in some other capacity. So if you're a co-op sponsor, you get first dibs, if you will. But there's no partnership ahead of time like some of the other places.
And then I have one last question before we get to the audience here. IP. So this is a really fast-moving space, right? I come into the test center. How do you make sure that no one else is looking over, my shoulder or your shoulder when it's being tested, and I can protect my IP?
We're really easy in that regard. First of all, we have a small facility, so if you rent our facility, you have the whole thing to yourself. If you engage with a Kettering professor to help with research or Kettering students, we have the most insanely generous policy. If it's yours, it's yours. We don't ever ask for that. So we're very generous.
I mean, that's true for MCity too. The structure that we have set up is, when companies are using the test facility, it's theirs alone, exclusive use, and so it's a bit easier than poor Mark. But we don't record data in the systems and the infrastructure unless you ask, and then that data is given only to you. And we have cloud tools and things to accomplish that.
Yeah, so for us, the data generated by the users is their data. We do collect it for them and share it back with them. The data we will keep, it's only by agreement with the tester. We'll anonymize it and put it into a kind of an aggregate pool of data from wherever we have it for our uses. But we've got a full data management program we're developing with Microsoft. with cloud services, and then the ability to transfer data directly from the site during testing with Wi-Fi connectivity, cellular connectivity, and eventually 4G or 5G really allows the testers the ability to take that data and send it across the internet to their home offices and basically keep it themselves without having to transfer it through the ACM system. So again, multiple ways of managing data.
So any questions from the audience?
Just going back to Michelle, we have a partner with a tier one, we're automotive prognostics. We're working together, and they would pay their 25%, so I'm not worried about that. Can you just talk a little bit about working together with MDOT? Ideally, we'd like to work together with, like state police vehicles or municipal vehicles, something like that.
Yeah, so good question. And we actually do, we have great relationships, as we've demonstrated here with our partners at PlanetM and MEDC. We also have a tremendous relationship with our Michigan State Police Agency. So they're literally entwined in everything that we're doing in the technology as well. We've had conversations with them. They do have some limitations for security reasons, obviously, of their fleet as well as their personnel. But I would encourage, if you have things, I'm happy to talk to you. Like I said, I literally spend an enormous part of my week in partnerships and determining, we do an assessment as an agency because we do get so many requests of what benefits are there to the state of Michigan as well. Doesn't necessarily mean directly to us. And if it's not to us, then we will connect you with where it's applicable. So it could be a local agency, it could be a partner agency or something like that. We are happy to help startups. We work with tons of companies all the way from the big ones to the small ones as well. And I think from what you heard from Will, we are here to help. We're here to bring business attraction to Michigan. We're here to keep the technology, the talent, and everyone here. So I would love to talk to you. Any of you that are interested, even outside of the grant, if there's things you want to do, that's what we do. We're here to help move the technology forward, and I'm happy to say that's why we're leading the country in what we're doing. We take great pride in those relationships. It's not just what we can get out of it, it's what the companies need to get out of it as well. We take that near and dear to heart here in Michigan from all of our partners. So we are very unique. I love to talk about it because it's extremely unique to Michigan that you have a government of agencies that collaborate, all from state agencies all the way down to our local partners. We do a ton of work with counties, cities, and villages, and they are part of all of our projects. So we did a deployment. We've done a few in Macomb County. Macomb, they just released a large deployment as well. And they did that because they were part of our projects. They learned, they understood the technology. We got them going, and now they're out running on their own. So it takes great, partnerships and pride to do that. So I'm more than happy to talk to anyone that's interested.
Really quick anecdote. I started with the MEDC October of 2017. And week 2 on the job, I went to Montreal for ITS World Congress. And whenever anybody asked me where I was from, Michigan, the immediate reaction was, oh, wow, you're with MDOT. Okay, that's really interesting. We just follow on and do whatever they do 6 to 12 months later. So basically, it really is, an example of collaboration and innovation here in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, quick question. This is Charlie from PlanetM. This is a question for the 3 test sites. I'm curious if you have vehicles on site that startups can equip or outfit their technology with to do the testing. I've gotten that question a few times.
Yeah, we have a research fleet. I think I showed a quick slide on that. We've got a couple Lincolns and some Kia Souls. These are by-wire controllable, so they can be, they're equipped with 80/20 rail, so that you can bolt sensors on or whatever kind of things you want if we don't have the vehicle and the right flavor for what you're trying to do already. And those vehicles all run an open source control system called ROS, Robot Operating System. So you can usually very easily talk to any of the sensors very quickly and gather data and control the vehicle through that same interface. It's open source. Our research teams love that because when they publish papers and things, they can publish the source code with that and then share that and build on it. But it's helpful for startups too, because of course you can get right into the control strategies and things very easily, quickly. Yeah, those are available.
I have one vehicle that's equipped 80-20 rack on the top, so you can add instrumentation really easy. Yeah, it's not fully autonomous at this point, but for sensor testing, I have at least one vehicle available.
I'll give your students a few more months, and then it will be.
So at this point, ACM has a few companion vehicles for testing activity. We haven't had our own built-up pilot vehicle yet from a connected and autonomous nature. We're working on that. Hopefully by mid to late this year, we'll have that at least one vehicle to help engage in testing.
Okay, so we only have about 2 minutes left of the webinar, and the last two questions from the folks online are for Amanda. So we're going to put you on the spot here. The first question is, how do you define a startup? So in the context of this question, it's potential startup developing a new test track. Would that qualify as a startup in this environment? But I think a question kind of alludes to is, what's the, is there a specific size or technology, but more so size of company, funding-wise, employees that you're looking at as a startup who qualifies?
So a lot of questions in one right there, but just best thing to do.
I got 2 minutes, so I'm trying to get them all in one.
For the sake of time, if you go to planetm.com/grants and you sign up to create an account, that essentially will take you to all of the information. Will answer all of the questions that were just asked in that. So what qualifies, what defines a startup is all of there. There's terms and conditions as well. Most of what we talked about today is there as well. But if there's ever any question with or any doubt, always contact me, contact anybody from the PlanetM team, anybody here on the stage usually can answer most of those questions as well.
And then one of the people online did some math here, and they came to the conclusion that with $300,000 available for testing, that equated to like a $30,000 to $40,000 grant size. Can you get some clarification on what's the typical size? And then for the research facility, or the testing facilities, this might be more of a follow-up with people after, but what do what does that buy you at the test sites?
Our general rule of thumb starting out, as I mentioned, so we're evaluating applications the first of every month for each of the 3 test sites. The way that we're starting out, and it's going to really depend on volume of applications. As of today, we have 14 applications. Kettering just joined recently, so they didn't have any just yet, but between ACM and M-City right now. And the way we're approaching it is that we receive the applications, we hand that information over to the 3 test sites, who sits down with their team and really evaluates what the ask is, sends out, might reach out to the startup to get some clarity on what they want to do. And then the 3 test sites will make a recommendation back to PlanetM on what they recommend. But to add to that, what we're starting with is that we're going to put a cap of 2 full days of testing for any one startup to start. So we are going to reevaluate in March of 2019. So if the applications tend to slow down over time, we will go back to that first round of grant recipients from the test sites, and we will offer them additional time to test at the 3 sites.
Okay, so we are just about a minute over. So no more questions. I really kind of want to thank everybody here. I think we learned quite a bit. Introduced a new program, introduced 3 new test sites, and a number of opportunities to collaborate. So if you have any questions and looking to apply for the second round of these, please reach out to anybody here, reach out to Wayne and our team, or anybody on the PlanetM team to find out how you can access this program, and look forward to some great pilots. So thank you.
If anybody here in the audience has any questions, we can stick around. If you want to ask in a group setting, we can do that, but we're going to be here for a little bit.